The protagonist asks, "Who is the guy?" and he begins by asking if the protagonist needs money. The guy explains some rules and asks why he doesn't do it with his company. The protagonist says he needs millions and doubts if they can do it with fewer rules. He concludes in his thoughts that they are actually loan sharks. The conversation continues, and the protagonist says he needs 5 million and can pay it back in 3 months. The stranger says that's easy since they are a company and asks him to come to his office to discuss further. Upon arriving at the office, he introduces the protagonist to the manager. The manager turns to the protagonist and asks how much he needs and the repayment time. The stranger explains the amount the protagonist needs, and the manager says he can pay it back, even with high interest rates. The manager then says that with the interest, it will be 7 million, and once the contract is signed, the amount will be quickly transferred to his account. The protagonist thanks him as he prepares to sign the contract. The manager says he needs something as collateral that is worth more than the loan. The protagonist then says his house is worth more than 5 million and also has a Mercedes worth 300,000. However, the manager confronts the protagonist, saying his house is worth at most 4 million and that he wouldn't be able to cover the loan. In desperation, the protagonist says the manager needs to help him and that he urgently needs 4.5 million right away. The manager, relaxed in his chair, says it's not a beneficial deal for them. The protagonist then slams the table and says if they lend him 4 million, he will be able to pay back the initial 7 million. The manager then says he will give a special help. The protagonist, in his thoughts, says that the documents for the house and car are not fake and that with a month left until the World Cup, these two won't be able to collect even if they are alive. The protagonist then leaves, and the company's guys say that for him to make this offer and mortgage his house, he must be desperate for money. The manager adds that he already hit his target by earning 7 million just by offering 4 million. The guys say he's like a fat cat, and they will squeeze the protagonist until he is dry. They tell him to call the overseas agency to send the money. The protagonist, in his car, says they are very stupid to lend an amount they will never see back. He then looks at his phone with the received PIX amount and says he now has money to improve his house's security with a total balance of 9 million. Time passes, and at the Battle Dragon Security Company, the protagonist, in his thoughts, says that the company is one of the largest security companies in China and is responsible for the security of numerous politicians and businessmen. He says that in his past life, he heard they built a top-notch security system for 1 million for a magnate's son, and if maintained, the security will last for many years. Moments later, a man named Wei Yin arrives and introduces himself to the protagonist, asking what he can do for him. Zhang shakes the man's hand and says he needs them to build a high-level security system for his apartment that can withstand the end of the world. The guy says their company is very good and asks him to look at some of their projects to choose better. The protagonist then starts analyzing focused. The protagonist sees a blueprint in one of the security plans and finds the implementations interesting. In his thoughts, he wishes his apartment to be like a turtle, impossible to invade. The company guy says he doesn't know what the protagonist's job is, but there's risk in any matter, affirming in his thoughts that it will be a big deal. Stunned by the situation, he says that even if it's a small apartment, with the new modifications and some weapon rentals, it will become a fortress. He finishes by asking if the protagonist knows how fortresses work. The businessman, analyzing the blueprint, says he was once a mercenary abroad and understands military weapons. This catches the protagonist's attention, and interested, he asks if he knows any way to get firearms.